First of all, let me thank everybody for coming into our chambers. And you are, one of the side benefits of today's announcement is that you guys get a sneak peek on some of the new features for our council meetings starting on June 25th with all this plexiglass so that we can all keep our germs and viruses to ourselves. With that, we're going to get started with just the order. We're going to start with our Mayor Lee Brand. Then I will proceed with introducing the commission members, some of them who joined us here today. Then we'll go to Councilmember Chavez, then Councilwoman Soria, then comments by our Mayor-Elect Dyer to my far right, and then we'll end with our chair of the commission, former council member and police officer Oliver Baines, and then we'll end the press conference with opportunity for questions and answers from the press. With that, I'll turn it over to our Mayor, Lee Brand.
Thank you, Council President. The killing of George Floyd sparked a national and global response to address decades of injustice and the need for police reform. We are here today to do our part, coming together to form a Fresno Commission for Police Reform. This is a transformational time in our history, and we have the opportunity of a lifetime to address long-standing issues of racial injustice and meaningful police reform. I want to thank the 35 members of our task force for their commitment. They represent the racial diversity of our city. They also represent a broad spectrum of stakeholders. The Police Reform Commission represents the collective consciousness of this city, with the eyes of Fresno looking over us and hoping and praying for meaningful answers. We have a daunting challenge in front of us, and the lives of over 540,000 people will be affected. We need to develop real and sustainable solutions to make Fresno a safer place for all our residents. And I want to thank the leadership of the local NAACP in staging a peaceful protest a few weeks ago, and for the great event that we had in front of City Hall yesterday, showing the city's support for Black Lives Matter. In times of crisis, our residents come together and unite. Fresno can lead the way and be a shining beacon of light to serve as the model for embracing justice for all. Let's show the nation what our vision looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to Councilmember Soria, Chavez, Mayor-Elect, and everybody else who has invested quite a bit of time in getting us here today. I also want to thank our chair of the commission, Mr. Oliver Baines, for accepting the toughest beat assignment in the city of Fresno. You know, when I called Oliver and asked him to come out of retirement and back on this dais today and into public service, he responded by a few ways. First, he verified with my Councilmember Chavez that my request was real. So thank you, Councilmember Chavez, for making sure he knew it wasn't a joke. Secondly, he demanded no compensation for this work, which we're happy to honor. Third, he asked to meet with city leaders, those of us on this dais, to ensure that we were committed to real change before finally agreeing to accepting the call for service. Oliver was not the only person that did his homework, verified our commitment to this work before agreeing to serve. Luisa, Sandra, Ashley, Mai, and all the other commissioners that I will introduce you to shortly have had pointed questions for us as city leaders and have confirmed and verified our commitment for real change. On behalf of the City Council and the Mayor, I'm here to publicly commit to the following. You will not be compensated for this work, but Fresno does thank you for your service to all the commissioners. This work will be one of the toughest and most important assignments for this community. We will provide you with the resources and outside expertise needed to draw out thoughtful and informed recommendations. We fully expect city leaders as well as the commission to be open and transparent with the community throughout this process. Everyone will be watching with high expectations and strong opinions. You will be criticized and second-guessed from multiple sides. But each of you have the full support of this council, the mayor, and the mayor-elect. Most importantly, you have the commitment that we will honor their recommendations and not treat them like a dusty book and put them on a shelf. We are committed to bringing your recommendations to life through the selection of a police chief, our city budget, and changing all relevant policies that are recommended by the Commission. Our communities and our officers deserve nothing less than our best collaboration. Now, allow me to introduce you to members of the Fresno Commission on Police Reform. Their chair, Oliver Baines, DeAngelique Jackson from the Fresno State NAACP, Sandra Saladon, Fresno Building Healthy Communities, Greg Gardner, retired chief, Mariah Thompson, National Lawyers Guild, Todd Frazier, Fresno Police Association's president, Aaron Foster, Faith in the Valley, Ron Manning, City of Fresno police officer, Bob Mitchell, a community leader with a very strong handshake, Ashley Rojas, Fresno Barrios Unidos, our deputy chief, Michael Reed, Luisa Medina, community member, Scott Bailey from the Fresno County Public Defender's Office, Angie Isaac, a retired police officer with the City of Fresno, Dr. Joseph Jones, the president of the Fresno Pacific University, Deep Singh from the Jakara Movement, Efrain Botello from Boys and Men of Color, Mark Salazar, the City of Fresno Police Department captain for Northeast, Brian King with Fresno EOC Street Saints, Trustee Annalisa Perea from State Center Community College District, Dr. James Pitts, Fresno State Department of Criminology professor, Gloria Hernandez, an extremely strong community advocate, Mai Tao, Civic Engagement Director for Hmong Innovative Politics, Gracie Valencia, Youth Organized California, Pastor DJ Kreiner, St. Rest Baptist Church, Pastor B.T. Lewis, Rising Star Church, Keisha Thomas, Board President of the Fresno Unified School District, Beba Islas, Trustee at Fresno Unified School District, Marcel Woodruff, Faith in the Valley, Phil Cooley, Deputy Chief, City of Fresno Police Department, Adrian Jones, the Fresno Housing Authority Chair, Brandon Dixon James, Reverend Simon Biesel, Woodland Community Church, Rod Wade Jr., United Fresno, John Liad from the State Center Community College District, Gail Gaston, Community Advocate, and our retired judge, Robert Oliver. As you can see, it's an extremely long list, but I believe it represents not only the diversity, but the depth of knowledge, experience, and thoughtfulness that the city needs to provide us some of the most transforming reforms that this city has ever envisioned for its public safety apparatus. With that, let me refer now to our Councilmember Chavez for any comments, followed by Councilwoman Soria.
Thank you, President Arias. I want to thank the commissioners for their willingness to work with the city in making sure that we draft a successful plan, which is what we all want. I want to especially thank my former colleague, Councilmember Emeritus, I'm going to use that term emeritus, Councilmember Baines, for your work and your desire to serve our community. We really do appreciate you. We think you're the right person for the job. And we want to make sure that we send that message to the city Fresno residents that there is going to be, as you can see from up here, we have the current mayor, Mayor Lee Brand, we have the future mayor, Jerry Dyer, we have the current council president and the next council president, myself and Councilmember Esmeralda Soria, that has been at the forefront of a lot of these difficult conversations. And I said that from the beginning that this commission will have a lot of uncomfortable conversations, but let's get uncomfortable together because I think it's time, it's long overdue. And I want to make sure that we keep focused on the work that needs to happen for our city. As you know, there are neighborhoods and communities that have a gap of trust with our police department, and it's our job to make sure that we bridge that gap. And we are hopeful that these reforms will be the beginning of a long conversation with regards to our communities and the investment that happens in those communities, because I am 100% sure that the commission is going to be bringing forward some very worthy recommendations, policies. But what I'm mostly interested in, and I mentioned this to my colleagues, is we need to start thinking beyond, because what happens oftentimes is there's a fire, sometimes figuratively, sometimes metaphorically, and then it gets put out, and then we lose sight of the big goal. And I don't want that to happen. I think for me, what I'm looking for is for us to institutionalize by way of policy these recommendations, which will then turn into policy, so that when Councilmember Chavez is not here, or Arias, or the next mayor, we're still having this conversation. And I think the best place to have that is where we always have a conversation about the budget. That needs to be part of this conversation. How well are we providing services? Importantly, how well are we developing relationships with our community? So along those lines, I'm happy to serve. As many of you know, I'm not a big fan of serving on commissions, but I think this is a very worthy cause that will require a lot of conversations. And I've often been accused of being the extreme moderate, but that's the world that I live in. I'm a very pragmatic person, and I think that's what you'll see from this commission, come out with some recommendations that will be great for our community, but more importantly, for those communities that have, for decades, felt like they weren't part of the conversation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I also want to extend my gratitude to all of the folks that have agreed to participate in what is an enormous and historic endeavor. I first want to take the time to thank Fresno State's NAACP, because if they had not acted with due diligence after the George Floyd incident, I don't think we would be having this conversation today. And so I want to point out that what we're doing today is because young people got together and said, we're tired of seeing the racial injustice that is happening in our community. And I'm so proud that it is young people leading the charge. Because if we look at history books, it has always been young people that have driven monumental change in our country. Just think about the civil rights movement. It started by students. And so I'm so proud of the young people that not only go to Fresno State, but that live in our community, that have stood up over the last 20 plus days since May 31st, when the first march happened. And it was a peaceful march, but I think that it elevated the conversation of what we needed to do, and that's why we are here today. To the commissioners, I tell you all that I do have high expectations. It is not by accident that you were chosen. There is a lot of work to be done. Just as I said yesterday when I was outside, I'm proud that the city of Fresno finally had the courage to say Black Lives Matter, and that we memorialize that through a proclamation, and that we visually put it in the middle of the road so that everyone could see the importance of this, of what we're doing today. But beyond that, beyond symbolic support, it is the commission, like the one that is being launched today, and the work that will be continued to do through our budget process and through policy over the coming months and the coming years, is really what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in just, creating a commission for the sake of commission. I'm interested in you guys doing the work so that we pass policies that is going to rectify the racial injustice that sometimes is embedded in the structures that we do have set in local communities. One, the police department. But beyond that, we also have to look at other policies. So this is one puzzle of ensuring that we have racial equality and justice in our community. And so I'm proud to be part of this today. It is historic. We're going to be able to look back, because I have the utmost confidence that all of you will do your best work to ensure that we have changes for generations to come. Thank you, everyone, for agreeing. And then just personally to my friend, Oliver Baines, who I had the pleasure of serving with, I also want to share that I just have just my utmost confidence that you're going to lead this. I know that when we initially talked, and because you are an African-American man in this city and you have the lived experience as a police officer and as a policymaker, I think that it is time that someone with your experience will help us lead this charge, which is very, very important in our community. Thank you.
To our mayor-elect, you have the floor.
Thank you, Miguel. Appreciate it. I want to begin by thanking all of the commission members who are going to participate on this very important commission. I know there's going to be a lot of work, and I appreciate your willingness to serve in a very compressed time frame of 90 days. This commission represents a lot of diversity in terms of ethnicity, professional backgrounds, as well as interest. But I do know the one interest that we all have in common is to make this city better. And I am confident this commission is going to move forward towards that. Commission has an opportunity, I believe, to do something that's very, very significant and meaningful in our community, something that is going to be with us for decades. As a former police chief and the future mayor of this city, it's important for those who are on this commission to know that I fully support your efforts and the recommendations and findings that you're going to bring forth to us as a city. I am supportive of the creation, and I look forward to being able to have an opportunity to review those recommendations. I also want the commission to know this, that as a former police chief, as a future mayor, I condemn all acts of police brutality. I condemn all acts of prejudice and racism and anything that causes a person to be treated less than with dignity. There's absolutely no room for it in law enforcement, in the profession. And I can tell you this, that no one dislikes a bad police officer more than another police officer, because it serves to taint the entire profession and disgrace and dishonor the profession. I also want to say thank you to the brave men and women in law enforcement, the ones that wear the badge in a very noble manner. I want to thank members of the Fresno Police Department for your hard work and dedication in keeping our citizens safe. I know oftentimes you put your life on the line to do that, and many times unnoticed and unfortunately unappreciated. You know, I've seen a lot of organizational change and changes in law enforcement during my 40 years in the police department. I've seen the pendulum of policing and the pendulum of the criminal justice system swing back and forth many times over those years. In times when violent crime was soaring, we were having multiple drive-by shootings nightly, home invasion robberies, carjackings that were occurring, innocent children being caught up in gunfire within our neighborhoods. The public outcry was heard loud and clear at that time that people wanted more police officers in their neighborhoods, increased enforcement, increased sentencing, which is what happened with 3 strikes and 1020 life. When I became the police chief, we had a violent crime suppression unit in place that ultimately, within my first year, I disbanded because I did not feel it was right for policing at that time. And today, police chiefs, mayors, and council members across this country, to include Fresno, are hearing loud and clear the need for a different style of policing, changes to the criminal justice system, and increased police accountability. And so we have a unique opportunity in Fresno and across this country to recreate policing as we know it today, to develop a new model, a new style, a new philosophy of policing in Fresno as determined by our community members and those who live in our residence. It is important for us to hear their voice. It is important for members of this commission to hear their voice. And it is my hope that voices from throughout Fresno will be heard, that people will take the time to come out and to express their views and their desires of what they want their police department to look like in the future. It's also my desire for this commission to take a deep dive into the policing profession as a whole, to understand its complexities, its demands, the dangers that are presented to officers as they do their job, to look at the difficulties in recruiting and hiring officers in order that we might be reflective of the community in which police officers serve. The challenges of the promotional process must also be looked at because strong leadership is so much needed today in law enforcement. In addition, it will be important for the Commission to examine certain department training, policies, and procedures designed to keep community members and officers alike safe. It's simply not enough to say we need more training or we need changes in policy without knowing what that training and those policies are that exist today. And just as important, I believe there is a need for this Commission to take a hard look at the types of calls that police officers by someone else in a different line of work. Calls that were inherited by the police officers. I can tell you that calls involving mental health, the homeless population, disruption within the home and neighborhoods of a non-criminal matter, those may very well be handled better by someone other than a police officer. The demand for police officers to respond call to call is unhealthy. It's unhealthy for our community, and it is unhealthy for the officers who serve. And so it is important to find ways that we can free up police officers so that they can be fully engaged in community policing, a community policing model that focuses on problem solving, enhancing community trust, and keeping our community safe. And so as I look to my left at our chair, former police officer and former council member Oliver Baines, I know that there's a lot of work ahead of you for this commission, but I'm confident with your leadership and the people who are going to serve on this commission that you are going to be able to deliver a product that is going to be beneficial for the citizens of this community for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Well, thank you. The great thing about speaking last usually is that everything that should be said has been said. And I will say that that is definitely the case here. I'm going to make my comments brief because I think that our panel of speakers on this dais did a remarkable job of summarizing what the hope and the hope is for this work that we're going to do. But I want to start off by just really thanking my former colleagues. Miguel's right when he recounted our conversation when he called me. Miguel's known to be a jokester sometimes, so I wasn't 100% sure if he was just pulling my chain when he asked me to do this work. And then it just so happened Luis called me 20 minutes later and goes, "Did you get the call?" And that did verify this work. But I want to say thank you. Council President called and asked me to participate in this, and he's not lying. He said, "Come out of retirement." He didn't tell you that my initial answer was probably not, because I'm enjoying retirement. But when he described to me the will of the council and what he wanted the outcome of the work to be, and the buy-in from the administration and the entire council, I couldn't say no. This is an incredible moment in time, not only in this country, but in our community. And if I'm called to serve, I'm going to serve. And so I'm here, and I thank you guys. You all are doing a fantastic job leading this city. You are rising to the occasion of the moment, and it's important that our city knows that. I share that very same sentiment with you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you rising to the occasion. We want to be on the right side of history in this discussion, and it seems as though we are. Shortly after I accepted the appointment, I got a call from our mayor-elect, and we had what I thought may have been the most heartfelt conversation I've ever had with him regarding the need for this work, his support and commitment to this work, and wanted to make sure that he could be used as a resource in any way possible to make sure that this community got what it so desperately needs. So I thank the entire panel. I really do. And I also thank the people that have, and I know it's already been said, but listen, I thank the people that have said yes to serving on this commission. This is going to be hard work. For those of you that know me, and I know a lot of people up here do know me very well, I don't do things for smoke and mirrors, and I don't do things for play. And all these commissioners are cut from the very same mold as me. We have an incredibly diverse group of people that are serving on this commission, all of whom intend to hold not only the council accountable, but me accountable as well to the integrity of this work. I have had a number of calls from commissioners as early as just before riding over here to this press conference to make sure that this work that we are going to embark on behalf of this community is genuine and that it is filled with integrity and that the community is a part of this work. And I can tell you wholeheartedly that as long as I lead this commission, all of those things will be true. I was sharing with the commissioners yesterday in just our opening remarks that I believe we're going to be very proud of the work that we produce. I really do. I can't remember a time where we've had such alignment from the city leadership behind a single important issue like this. It's very rare to have the council unanimously support this work, along with the administration and the new administration. It's a unique time in our history, and I intended to take full advantage of it. So I know for sure that when we bring back our recommendations on what should be the policing philosophy for the city of Fresno and its police department, our community is going to be proud. And I'm not going to get too far ahead of the work in specifics about what exactly we're going to bring back, because the commission needs to have an opportunity to do its work. But I can tell you that we will be taking a comprehensive look at policing in Fresno. We will be examining the philosophies of the department as it is now and measuring those philosophies along some of the best policing practices that occur in the country. There is no reason why this work cannot produce what could be the best policing agency in all of America. And I'm committed to that. There's no reason why the city of Fresno cannot have the best policing department in the country and adopting the best standards of policing in the 21st century. So with that, I appreciate you all giving me time, and I'll yield back to you, Council President.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to point out for the public and the media, we are being very intentional on not commanding the narrative, not limiting the discussion or the voices of the powerful commission members that we've appointed. Our role, mine, Councilwoman Soria and Chavez, will be simply to make sure we clear the way and get our commissioners whatever information they need. The role of the mayor and the mayor-elect is going to be prepared to fully implement some of those recommendations as they come forward and ensure that they're represented in the budgets that we adopt, in the MOUs that we approve with labor, and in the policies that we change. So our clear goal for the whole commission is you have 90 days to do this heavy lifting. We know it's hard, but it's so important, and we must do it within 90 days so that we can have that information prior to approving a final budget. If we go down the path of a continuing resolution, before we hire a new chief, that we need to make sure what kind of police department he's going to be leading. And before all of us forget what the young people, as Councilman Soria described, DeAngelique, Jackson, and everyone else, the momentum that they've created to move this work forward. So with that, we will take a couple of questions here from the dais, and then I will ask that the commissioners are here, and you're free to ask them any questions that they may have. I have no reservations on how they're going to answer their questions. They're all capable professionals and leaders in our community, and they would be best to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, so I worked with the council. We worked pretty closely together with the council, the mayor's administration, the mayor-elect, to make sure that we had as much of a representation of the leadership in Fresno as we could. And it was and I shared this with all of them. And my thought process was anyone that wanted to serve on this commission, I pretty much said yes to. I felt like it was such an important moment in Fresno's history and there's so many people that want to be involved for all the right reasons, want to contribute, that anybody that reached out to me personally or reached out to them, I think we found a way to say yes. So I don't want to give the impression that we were super selective. There were obviously some folks we definitely wanted on there, but we also opened it up and allowed people to make requests to be on the commission, which in large part were met. I don't think that, I don't think if anybody was, I don't think anybody was left off. And what was the second part of your question, David? Yeah. No, thank you. So yeah, we do plan to have community meetings. The commission meetings will not be open to the public, but we plan to have a number of community meetings receiving input from the community on the way that they want the community to be policed. And I'll expand on that a little bit for you. We suspect that there are going to be David, and we want to make sure that the commission has the ability to feel safe with their exchanges with each other, and some of that may need to be private.
And if I would add, each commissioner will be required to complete a 700 financial disclosure form to ensure that there are no conflicts with the city business, as they are advising us on policy. And we will find a way to publish all the information that they review, the studies that they go through, the research that's been conducted, and also summarize the meetings that they engage in. So we're going to ensure that this is a very public and transparent process, while also giving them the space they need to have much more difficult conversations. But it will finalize the details over the next few days, and we'll be very public with those.
Well, I mean, so me being a former council member, I have made this point to the commission members, and I know it myself. The recommendations that we put forth, I can tell you that we are going to feel confident in all of those recommendations, okay? However, these are the policymakers, and it really is ultimately the decision of the policymakers whether to accept all or part or some of the recommendations. But the recommendations that we put forth, we're going to feel good about and hope that they accept them. But it is up to them ultimately.
And I would add that if you look back at the city of Fresno, we have used the fire department's process as an example. After the severe accident of a captain, they opened up themselves to national experts and went through a very rigorous process and came up with hundreds of recommendations. And it's taken them 5 years to fully implement. These recommendations, we anticipate some will be immediate, some will be quick, some would be cost efficient, others would take longer. So we've asked them, give us your best thinking on everything, and we will figure out a way to chip at it and get as many things done as soon as possible. All right, with that, the commissioners, if you can raise your hands for the media, and if they want to ask you questions, welcome to Public Policy 101, where you're a public figure. Thank you all for coming.